Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on Noon and Zone, home of Southern Sports, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. And I am excited to be here. It is Friday. Everybody's out of school. Happy Veterans Day to all you veterans out there. And this is going to be a special edition of the Sports Beat, as I'm going to recap all the action last night in high school football playoffs. Going to preview today. It's the first round action for most schools in Georgia and Alabama. And I'm going to recap everything that's happened in the world of sports, to include the Columbus River Dragons getting a bounce-back win against the Zydeco last night. You got the openers for Columbus State Cougars and Lady Cougars basketball this weekend as well. And we have reclassification for the GHSA for next school year. I will get into the key regions for all the teams in the Chattahoochee Valley. But let's go ahead and get this show started. I am excited to be here. Had a late night last night. Thrift Behringer and I called the Glenwood-Autauga semifinal AISA 3A playoff game. Glenwood advances to the AISA championship game against their longtime rival, Lee Scott Academy. That will take place on Thursday at 8 o'clock at the Cramden Bowl. They get the 45-12 victory over Autauga Academy. Camden White, what a baller. 3 touchdowns. Have yourself a night. Dallas Crow was efficient with the football. Carter Judah, big time runs. And they advance to another championship game where they will face Lee Scott Academy. The Warriors of Lee Scott got the 42-3 win over Fort Dale Academy. And they tried to defend their AISA championship that they won last year. What a way to go out in the AISA, as both schools and Autauga Academy, they are all going to be in the AHSAA next season for their school year. Some of the other action, Chambers Academy, they advance to the AISA 2A championship at the Cramden Bowl on Thursday as they defeated Patrician Academy 35-2. Lochapoka, first round action in the AHSAA Class 1A. Lochapoka defeats Southern Choctaw 34-6 at Beulah High School because their field is getting renovated, so they were playing that game at Beulah. Maplesville got the 41-14 victory over Choctaw County. And Eufaula, they get a big win over Shelby County to advance in the 5A AHSAA playoffs. And we do have playoff action all across the Chattahoochee Valley tonight. Because of the NFHS network and the restrictions to broadcast for the GHSA, we will not be live streaming any of the playoff games today. So we do have a night off. And I'm looking forward to spending time with my family during this Friday night. It'll be the first Friday night that I've had off since the beginning of August. And I'm going to be watching a lot of these games. One game I'm going to be focused on is Harris County. They are hosting Ola. Ola is a very dangerous 4 seed with a 7-3 record. Harris County 9-1. They win their region for the first time in over a decade. And if they win, they could get 10 wins. They have never done that in program history. So I'm very interested to see Harris County tonight against Ola. Down at Otis Spencer Stadium, we have Academy of Richmond County coming into this game 5-5, taking on the Red Hot Carver Tigers, who are 7-3. They win a region title, and they are guaranteed 2 home playoff games. This is going to be a big one at Otis Spencer at 7 p.m. Northside, they are on the road today against Jones County. So looking forward to seeing that one as well. And then we have Davidson that's going to be at Garrett Harrison Stadium taking on the Central Red Devils. So in front of me, I got a bunch of brackets. So yesterday, I printed out a bunch of brackets. I'm going to start with Class 4A because we have several teams that are going to be in action. We're going to start with LaGrange. Tonight at Callaway Stadium, they are taking on the Westover Patriots. LaGrange finished the year at 8-2. They have a home playoff game because they did defeat Troup County, the final regular game of the season. Troup County is on the road down in Cairo to take on the Syrup Makers. They are the number 3 seed. In that upper quadrant, they would play the winner of Wayne County and Spalding. Spalding is the number 1 seed in that bracket. If you go all the way to the lower quadrant, quadrant 4, Trinity Christian, the number 4 seed, they are taking on Bainbridge. And then in the upper right quadrant, quadrant 3, on Saturday, Shaw is taking on Stars Mill. Stars Mill is the number 1 seed because they did defeat Troup County and LaGrange. The defending 2-time 4A state champion for 4A is Benedictine, and they will take on Baldwin. The winner of that Westover-LaGrange matchup could face Benedictine in the second round. That would be a very intriguing second round matchup. That's going to be a tough bracket because Cedartown is a number 2 seed down there. Pace Academy, North Oconee, that's another big-time matchup. North Oconee could be facing Cedartown. I'm actually going to play a little filling out my bracket, kind of foreshadowing the second round potential matchups. We could get a potential matchup of LaGrange and Benedictine. We could get a potential matchup of Cedartown and North Oconee. And then in the quarterfinals, it could be Benedictine and North Oconee. I just think that Benedictine is just too strong. They are a number 1 seed for a reason because they are the 2-time defending state champions. Over in the upper quadrant, quadrant 1, Troup County and Cairo. I think Troup County gets the upset win on the road, and I think they play Spalding. Spalding is the number 1 seed. Their path, they're going to have to go on the road if they want to make a big push like they did getting to the semifinals last year. Heritage taking on Westminster. North Hall taking on Stockbridge. Over in quadrant 3, Lovett, Madison County, Hayfield Charter, and Central of Carrollton. That's going to be a very good matchup. Central is the overall number 1 seed. I think they get the win over there to take on Madison County. Westside and New Hampstead, Shaw, Stars Mill. I think it's just too much to ask for Shaw. I think that Stars Mill is one of those powerhouses that really has something to prove. I think they get the win over Shaw, where they will probably take on New Hampstead in the second round. Down in lower quadrant 4, East Forsyth and Luella. Northwest Whitfield and Stevenson. I think Stevenson gets the win there. Luella gets the win over the number 3 seed East Forsyth. And then finally, down in lower quadrant 4, Brooke County and Perry. I like Perry in this one. We could have a Perry-Bainbridge matchup in the second round. Second round matchup games will happen next week. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I am so excited about these brackets, printing them out, and I haven't filled any of them out yet. But, I printed them all out even for AHSAA. I will get into AHSAA, GIAA, GAPS, but I'm not really going in order. I'm going to go to 2A. I want to start with the teams that represent the Chattahoochee Valley first. Remember, we don't have any 6A or 7A schools in Columbus or the surrounding areas. So let's start in upper quadrant for 2A, the GHSA playoffs. Putnam County taking on Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald won the state title in 2021. They lost in the championship game to Thompson last year. They are a dangerous 2 seed. They would await the winner of Vidalia and Spencer. Spencer was a number 1 seed last year. They lost to Berrien. They got something to prove. They're taking on Vidalia on Saturday at 1 p.m. We could get a potential second round matchup of Spencer and Fitzgerald. I could not wait for that. Model and Terrell, the number 3 and the number 2 seed, they would await the winner of Providence Christian and Callaway. That game taking place, Callaway Stadium. Cannot wait for that game as well. We could see a potential quarterfinal matchup between either Callaway and Fitzgerald or Callaway and Spencer. If it's Callaway and Fitzgerald, it's a rematch of the 2020 state championship. Down in lower left, Worth County taking on Laney. You got Academy, Ace Charter taking on Pierce County. Pierce County is the number 1 seed. Ace Charter is a very dangerous number 4 seed. South Atlanta taking on North Murray. Redan taking on Fellowship Christian. Over in upper right, Eagles Landing Christian Academy taking on Union County. Washington taking on Rockmart. Southwest taking on Toombs County. And Jeff Davis taking on the defending 2A champion Thompson. Down in lower right, Athens Academy taking on Columbia. Fanning County is taking on North Cobb Christian. Appling County is taking on Northeast. I like Northeast in this. They are a dangerous 2 seed. And then Washington County is taking on Cook. 2A is always fun. And when I get later into the show, I'm going to talk about the reclassifications because 2A just got a little bit more interesting for next school year. Class 3A, upper quadrant, you got Hesbia taking on Crisp County. Long County taking on Mary Persons. I like Mary Persons in this bracket, not only to advance against Long County, but to advance against the winner of Hesbia and Crisp County. White County is taking on Bremen. Hebron Christian Academy is taking on Cedar Grove. Cedar Grove is out for blood. I think that Cedar Grove is going to try to do everything they can to win a state title. They feel like they got robbed last year in the state championship. Cedar Grove has got to be the team to beat, especially a very dangerous number 1 seed coming out of that upper quadrant. Down in the lower left, Thomasville taking on Harlem. Jackson taking on Calvary Day. I like Calvary Day as well. I think that the semifinal matchup in this side of the brackets is going to be Calvary Day and Cedar Grove. Ringgold taking on Wesleyan. Carver of Atlanta taking on Stevens County. Up in the upper right, Douglas taking on Oconee County. Gordon Lee is taking on Lumpkin County. Peach County taking on Savannah Christian, and Monroe taking on Morgan County. And finally, the lower right, Monroe area is taking on Sandy Creek. Sandy Creek is a number 2 seed because Cedar Grove ended up winning the region. Gilmer taking on Adairsville. Adairsville is a number 1 seed, but I think that Sandy Creek beats Monroe area. Adairsville beats Gilmer. And I think Sandy Creek gets the upset over Adairsville, which could set up for a potential matchup. You got the Academy of Richmond County taking on Carver. I think Carver advances there. Savannah Country Day and Upson Lee. Upson Lee will probably advance over there. You have Carver and Upson Lee in the second round, which Carver beat Upson Lee last year in the first round. I think Carver gets out of this quadrant. They represent as the number 1 seed, and in the quarterfinals, they could play Sandy Creek, which means they would be hosting a quarterfinal matchup Thanksgiving weekend at Otis Spencer Stadium. That was 3A. Now let's go to 5A. And yes, I'm going out of order, but these are the most intriguing matchups. 5A in the GHSA playoffs. Upper quadrant. In the left, Decatur, Ware County, McIntosh, Warner Robins. Warner Robins has reached 3 straight state titles. They won 2. And then they lost to Ware County last year. Dalton taking on Greater Atlanta Christian. Flowery Branch is taking on Creekside. Down in Quadrant 2, this is where it gets very interesting. Ola is taking on Harris County at the county tonight. Danny Durham Field. They will await the winner of Statesboro and Tucker. If Harris County can advance past Ola, I like their matchup against either Statesboro or Tucker. I think Tucker's going to win this game, possibly setting up a matchup next week at the county against Tucker and Harris County. Cambridge taking on Hiram. Jackson taking on Jefferson. Jefferson is the number 1 seed out of Quadrant 2. That's going to be very interesting. Over in the upper right, Chapel Hill is taking on Eastside. Centennial is taking on Cartersville. Dutchtown taking on Northgate. Northgate got the number 2 seed in Harris County's region. Jenkins taking on Arabia Mountain. Down in Quadrant 4, Loganville taking on Mays. Cass is taking on Kell. Northside on the road against Jones County. If they were able to get the upset over Jones County, they would probably go on the road and take on Coffee, because I like this matchup between Coffee and Chamblee. I think Coffee gets past Chamblee, the number 4 seed. And so we have playoffs all around in the Chattahoochee Valley. And I'm just getting started. I mean, that was just Georgia. Now let's go over to Alabama, because I got the bracket for the AHSAA 7A playoffs. And we've got some very intriguing matchups tonight in Alabama. Central is hosting Davidson at Garrett Harrison Stadium. Central, they undefeated, 9-0. You have Andrew Alford, all-world quarterback. He's got weapons. Cam Coleman, Dylan Gentry, Dalen Upshaw. He's got a trio of wide receivers. You couldn't ask for just a better situation for Andrew Alford and success. Central hosting a Davidson team that's 5-5. They won 3 straight region games to sneak into the playoffs. They would await the winner of Baker and Auburn. Auburn has to go all the way down to Mobile, Alabama to take on Baker. And we could get a quarterfinal matchup next week at Garrett Harrison Stadium against Auburn and Central. This is usually a semifinal matchup, but this could be a quarterfinal matchup, and that would be absolutely amazing. I actually think all the teams in this region could pull off the upset. Dothan is a number 4 seed. They are taking on Mary Montgomery. Mary Montgomery was undefeated the entire year. I still think Dothan can pull off the upset because they're a very dangerous number 4 seed. And then Enterprise is hosting Defean. I think the Enterprise gets the win and advances. Even if Mary Montgomery wins, still, you got 3 of the 4 teams in this region that could advance to the quarterfinals. And now let's talk about the lower bracket. These are all the other teams in 7A. James Clemens is hosting Hoover. You got Hewitt-Trussville, the number 2 seed, taking on Bob Jones. Thompson, the defending 4-time state champions in 7A. Remember, they got that 9th grade quarterback, Trent Seaburn. They have been all-world. A lot of people think they're down this year. A lot of people think that Central could actually dethrone Thompson in the state championship that will take place on December 6th down in Tuscaloosa. They're taking on Florence. A big shout out to Ben Hayes and Travis Creasy. Those are my Florence boys. I hope that Florence can pull off the upset. I mean, I love Florence, Alabama. I went to Freed Hardeman with a lot of people from Florence, Alabama, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. Austin taking on Vestivia Hills. It is going to be incredible. The matchups in 7A. Now, I'm not going to really go into detail with 6A because we really don't have any teams in the Chattahoochee Valley in 6A. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when I come back, I'm going to talk about all the teams in Alabama for 5A, 4A, all the way down to 1A. You don't want to go anywhere. It's the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live, here on WQEE 99.1 FM. The Key. I hope that you're all enjoying your Friday. I get excited when it comes to high school playoff time because in my hand, I get brackets. I got brackets. I've looked at these. I've been going through all the brackets. I printed out all the brackets from the GHSA 7A all the way to Class 1A Division 1, and the AHSAA 7A all the way down to 1A, AISA, GIAA, and the gaps. It is just absolutely phenomenal that all these brackets, they mean something. I haven't really filled any of them out yet, but I said I wasn't going to talk about 6A and the AHSAA. I got some time. I will talk about 6A because over in the upper quadrant, the quadrant 1, we got a first round matchup between the defending 6A champions. There you go. Saraland taking on McGordy. And then they would await the winner of Carver Montgomery and Briarwood Christian. Hillcrest taking on St. Paul's Episcopal. Helena taking on Wetumpka. Over in Quadrant 2, you got Benjamin Russell taking on Sidney Lanier. Hueytown is taking on Theodore. Pike Road taking on Homewood. Spanish Fort is taking on Bessemer City. Quadrant 3, Parker taking on May Jemison. Oxford taking on Athens. Garden City is taking on Gardendale. Hartsville taking on Center Point. Down in Quadrant 4, Muscle Shoals taking on Pinson Valley. Fort Payne taking on Mortimer Jordan. Clay Chalkville, remember, they upset Thompson. This is a dangerous 6A team taking on Coleman. And then Mountain Brook taking on Buckhorn. My prediction for the 6A championship is Saraland and Clay Chalkville. I think that Saraland goes back-to-back. If you look at Rivals.com, you look at all the talent that Saraland has. They were on ESPN as well, and they got a big upset. And Saraland, they can play with the big boys, and they're one of the top teams, not only in the state of Alabama, but in the country. Going over to 5A, Gulf Shores is going to be at Beauregard. The Beauregard Hornets back in the playoffs once again after having a double-digit win total from last season. The blueprint is working for the Beauregard Hornets. Charles Henderson taking on Mabry. Remember, Charles Henderson went all the way to the 5A state championship, lost to Ramsey last year. Central of Clay County, this is a very sneaky team. They're undefeated. They look really good. They're taking on UMS Wright Prep. The winner of that will take on the winner of Holtville and Heedland. Down in Quadrant 2, Demopolis taking on Carroll. Valley is on the road. They're in the playoffs for the first time since 2019. They are on the road taking on Rain. Eufaula, who got the win over Shelby County last night, they will await the winner of Faith Academy and Elmore Academy. Quadrant 3, the defending 5A champion Ramsey Rams are taking on West Point. Leeds taking on Arab. A big shout out to the Columbus Lions general manager Lee Snow. That is his alma mater. Russellville taking on Fairfield. Scottsboro taking on Moody. Quadrant 4, Guntersville taking on Springville. Fairview is taking on John Carroll Catholic. Southside is taking on Boaz. Pleasant Grove taking on Lawrence County. Yeah, I'm going through these brackets pretty fast. I want to try to give all the schools in Alabama some love. Let's go to 4A. Jackson taking on Claiborne County. And Dalgia taking on Sipsey Valley. The Hanley Tigers, they are taking on St. Michael Catholic. American Christian Academy taking on Booker T. Washington. We could get a Hanley-Booker T. Washington matchup in the second round. Try to give some love to those teams on the outskirts of the Chattahoochee Valley. Bibb County taking on Montgomery Catholic. Jacksonville taking on Bayside Academy. Montgomery Academy taking on Bibb County. Montgomery Catholic taking on West Blockton. T.R. Miller is taking on Anniston. Over in Quadrant 3, Dora taking on Priceville. Wanetta is taking on Brooks, and this bracket, not a whole lot of teams in 4A. I'll try to cover that one next week. At 3A, we don't have a whole lot of teams. Now, this is where Glenwood is expected to be for the AHSAA for next school year. How about those Beulah Bobcats? In 3A, I finally get to talk about the Beulah Bobcats in the playoffs. They are on the road taking on Mobile Christian. They will await the winner of Houston Academy and Alabama Christian Academy. A big shout out to everybody that works at Alabama Christian Academy. That is right in Montgomery, Alabama, near Faulkner University. I've known some people that have worked over there. I've been to a football game there. It's just an incredible atmosphere. Wellborn taking on Flowmation. You got Trinity Presbyterian taking on Providence Christian. Down in Quadrant 2, St. James is taking on Opp. Randolph County, that school that won double-digit wins last year after not winning a single game the year before out of Wedowee. They are going to be hosting W.S. Neal. Strawn taking on Southside. Thomasville taking on Dadeville. Over in Quadrant 3, Gordo taking on Phil Campbell. Geraldine taking on Susan Moore. Lauderdale County taking on Fayette County. Pennington is taking on Piedmont. Madison Academy taking on Hoax Bluff. Mars Hill Bible taking on Oakman. Sylvania taking on Vinmont. Winfield taking on Colbert County. Over in 2A, Clark County taking on Vincent. Lawn is taking on Goshen. Comer is taking on Washington County. Highland Home, I think they're my dark horse to win 2A, taking on Arlington. Reeltown, now we're getting interesting. Reeltown, the Rebels, looking pretty good. They are hosting Vicksburg, not Vicksburg in Mississippi. Thornsby taking on Chickasaw. Cottonwood taking on Laverne. St. Luke's Episcopal is taking on Isabella. Tuscaloosa Academy is taking on Red Bay. Southeastern taking on Collinsville. Tanner taking on Lamar County. Pisgah taking on Pleasant Valley. Fife taking on West End. Lexington taking on Aliceville. Locust Fork taking on North Sand Mountain. And Sulligent taking on Hallaton. I apologize if I mispronounced one of these schools. I know that there's somebody in Alabama that's watching this show or listening to the show thinking, man, he's butchering my school. Remember, it took a while for me to properly pronounce Sylacauga or Lochapoka, Notasulga. I'm really working on my pronunciation of these Alabama schools. Finally, 1A. Speaking of the Lochapoka Indians, Quadrant 1, I'm going to talk about who they could possibly face. They did get a big win last night. Leroy is taking on Calhoun. Georgiania is taking on Keith. Lochapoka got the win against Southern Choctaw yesterday. They will await the winner of Linden and Brantley. If they win out of this quadrant, they could possibly play Keith, a team that they faced in the playoffs last year. Sweetwater is taking on Floradia. Maplesville, who got the win over Choctaw County last night, they will await the winner of Sweetwater and Floradia. Elba taking on University Charter. Milry is taking on Notasulga. Lynn taking on Shoals Christian. Oh, this is over in Quadrant 3, by the way. Spring Garden taking on Coosa Christian. Hacklesburg taking on Marion County. Valley Head is taking on Raglan. Decatur Christian Academy is taking on Wintersboro. Addison taking on Pickens County. Wadley taking on Cedar Bluff. And South Lamar taking on Meek. Yes, I've flown by those brackets. I wanted to make sure that I give everybody some love. And don't forget, next week, I'm going to recap all the brackets, the winners of the first round matchups. It is going to be incredible. I'm going to swing it back to Georgia because I got to talk about the GIAA. Let's start with the GIAA. Class 1A football, because I want to give a big shout out to the Flint River Academy Wildcats. I can't do it as great as their PA announcer, Joe Howard. A big shout out to Joe Howard. He is the public address announcer for Flint River Academy. They have got a bye this week. Next week, they will host the winner of Thomas Jefferson Academy or Fullington Academy. One win away from playing at Mercer University at Five Star Stadium on November the 30th. Good luck to the Flint River Wildcats. I believe they're the favorites. A big shout out to Joe Howard, who's been not only covering them on the road, but just doing a phenomenal job as the public address announcer, the voice of the Wildcats, and I love it when every time Flint River gets a first down, Wildcats, and I don't think I could do it as good as him. Big shout out to Joe Howard. Over down in the lower bracket, Memorial Day taking on Harvester Christian Academy, and then Robert Toombs Christian Academy has a bye. Let's go over to the GIAA Class 4A. Brookstone and Pacelli. Yes, this matchup is set for next week. I cannot wait. This rivalry, the last two times these two teams faced, it went into overtime. First Presbyterian Day has the first round bye. Bethlehem Christian Academy and Tatnall Square Academy will face off next week as well. Bullock Academy is going to wait the winner of St. Apicelli and Brookstone. That is going to be a road game. Whoever wins St. Apicelli and Brookstone will be on the road on the 24th, Thanksgiving weekend, with a right to play in the GIAA 4A championships on December the 1st. Oh, I cannot wait for this matchup. It is going to be absolutely incredible. Just a winner of note, some of the play-in games. You got Stratford Academy taking on Strong Rock Christian. George Walton Academy is taking on Westfield School. So you got First Presbyterian Day will await the winner of Stratford Academy, Strong Rock Christian. Bullock Academy will await the winner of George Walton Academy and Westfield School. Now let's talk about the gaps. Yeah, I printed out all the brackets here on the show. Cherokee Christian has the bye. Calvary Christian has the bye. A big shout out to the Calvary Christian Knights and Coach Emmanuel Brunson for winning a region title, getting the win over Skipstone Academy last weekend. That caused Skipstone Academy to get the number 2 seed. They will play the Walker School for a right to play Cherokee Christian next week in the semifinals. I was trying to get a score update between the Keens Academy and Lanier Christian Academy last night, as I will go ahead and get to my phone to see who won that game, because the winner of that game will face the Calvary Christian Knights on November the 17th in the semifinals. And a big shout out to all those schools out there that do update your max preps, because I really think that it is a very good tool to have. You have all these schools, and I'm actually on the broadcast, and I'm trying to get all the school updates as much as possible, and I could not get any of the school updates. So please, just do me a favor, update your max preps. You'll do us a solid. And thank you once again. I'm just excited that Calvary Christian, they are going to be hosting a semifinal game in the gaps for the right to make it all the way to the championship, November the 24th. So if both number 1 seeds advance, that game will be at Cherokee Christian. But we'll see what happens. I don't have anything. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, I'm going to wrap up everything that happened in the world of sports. You're watching the Sports Beat on Facebook Live, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Final segment of the show before I get you out of here. We've flown by high school football. I printed off all the brackets. I spent the first 30 minutes of the show talking about all these brackets, and I will try to get you updated. Next week's show is going to be an audio-only show because I'm going to be away for training for my job, so I'm not going to be able to have the luxury of having my Wi-Fi, the virtual background, and having everything that makes this show amazing. Let's go ahead and get into some of the scores that happened Yesterday, the River Dragons, they get a bounce-back win over the Baton Rouge Zydeco, 6-1. They are 4-1 on the season. 2 goals and assist by Alex Storjahan. Joseph Taylor with 20 saves. They will be back in action for the rubber match. Puck drop, 8:30 tonight down in Baton Rouge before they get ready for a massive home opener at the Columbus Civic Center next Friday, November the 17th. Tickets are still available for this game as the Columbus River Dragons trying to get off to a hot start like they did last year in the FPHL. Columbus State men's basketball team is on the road in North Carolina tonight as they will take on Barton College. The Columbus State women's basketball team is home at the Lumpkin Center tonight. Tip-off at 5:30 against Miles College. Come on out to the Lumpkin Center if you're not doing anything on a Friday night. I know we got a lot of high school football going on, but please support the Cougars and Lady Cougars. They are a wonderful brand, a wonderful product. I've had Coach Moore and Coach Hauser on the show multiple times. I would love to get them back on the show here and on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, the show I do with Thrip Behringer, as we want to try to promote the Columbus State Cougars and Lady Cougars. Congratulations to the CVCC Lady Pirates for getting the 85-46 win yesterday. They go to 2-2 as they defeated the Southern Crescent Technical College, and they are 2-2 on the season, and you could watch that on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You can catch a replay of that. They are back in action on Monday, tip-off at 6 p.m., taking on Southern Union State Community College. And don't forget that the CVCC Pirates are in action Wednesday against Southern Crescent Technical College. Tip-off is at 6:30. You can catch that right here on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. As I want to talk about the GHSA reclassification. They made the announcements. The schools appealed. You had teams that were in 4A that they wanted to go down to 3A, but it's final. These are going to be the regions. I'm going to touch up on 3 regions because this has the most effect on these regions, especially these teams in the Chattahoochee Valley. Starting with the first region, this is going to be 3A. You got Fayette County, LaGrange, Mary Persons, Sandy Creek, Spalding, Trinity Christian, Troup County, Upson Lee, and Whitewater. This is the new region for 3A. Let's go to 4A. This is the highest reclassification for any school in the Chattahoochee Valley. Remember, 7A has gone away. They wanted to have 6A as the highest region because they want to get more teams in the region. I mean, some of these regions have 10, 11 schools. They won't have an opportunity for non-region play because they all play each other in the region. This is in 4A. You have Northside in Harris County. You got Stars Mill, Mundy's Mill, Jonesboro, Griffin, and Central of Carrollton. That will be a region for next school year. And finally, I got excited about this region. Region 1 2A. Every school in Columbus that's not named Northside is going to be in this region. And also, throw in Sumter County. So they'll have to travel to Americus, Georgia every now and then. You got Carver, Columbus, Hardaway, Jordan, Kendrick, Shaw, Spencer, and for kicks and giggles, let's just throw in Sumter County, the non-Columbus school that is in this region. This is just like 2 years ago when they were all in 4A, minus LaGrange and Troup County. I'm excited that all these schools get to play each other. I miss seeing Shaw take on Carver in a region game. I miss seeing Kendrick taking on Columbus or Hardaway taking on Jordan. We haven't had these region matchups anymore, and it's great to see. So I'm looking forward to that. A couple more tidbits. I want to go into some of the national news in sports. Congratulations to the Atlanta Hawks. They get the 120-119 win over the Orlando Magic in Mexico City. DeJounte Murray hits a big 3. Paulo Banchero ends up missing a shot. and the Hawks survive. They are 5-3. Trae Young with 41 points. The Hawks are starting to look really good. I think that they play their game and fire on all cylinders. They could be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And I got to give a shout out. I don't talk a whole lot about hockey on the show unless it's the River Dragons, but Connor Bedard is an 18-year-old phenom in the NHL, plays for the Chicago Blackhawks. He had 2 goals and an assist last night as the Blackhawks got the 5-3 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning. This kid is going to be a superstar. I mean, every now and then in the NHL, we get a once-in-a-generation talent. We got Sidney Crosby over a decade ago, Wayne Gretzky before that. I think Connor Bedard is that next player. I know a lot of people think that Connor McDavid was going to be that next superstar for the Edmonton Oilers. He's still good, but Connor Bedard is a once-in-a-generation talent. I mean, we're going to get that in the NHL and the NBA with Victor Wembanyama. Sign me up. And then last night we had I did not watch this game. It was on Prime Video. The Chicago Bears, they defeat the Carolina Panthers 16-13 as Tyson Bagley gets his first NFL win. And don't forget, we got some juicy matchups in college basketball tonight. 2 ranked teams, Duke and Arizona. That's going to be a fun one. Tennessee taking on Wisconsin. The University of Georgia, they're trying to bounce back over their loss against Oregon. They are taking on Wake Forest. And Kennesaw State, they are taking on Florida State. I cannot wait to see Kennesaw State this year in action. And then real quick, before I close this show, college football. You got Georgia taking on Ole Miss. When I think of this matchup, a lot of people think that Ole Miss could pull off the upset against the Georgia Bulldogs. I just think that Georgia's just getting started. There were talks that Brock Bowers could be ready for this game. I would not rush him back. I think that Georgia's offense, after seeing Georgia take on Missouri, I felt this offense was good enough to move the football, and then their defense plays a bend or don't break defense style. But Ole Miss's offense is up-tempo. Jackson Dart, he's a good quarterback. Judkins, if they just continue to run the football, Georgia's going to have to stop Judkins. And you don't want to get in a shootout with Ole Miss because it's Lane Kiffin. He's a wild card. I love this coaching matchup between Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart. These were the 2 assistants on Nick Saban's staff for a couple of years in 2015. And now let's talk about Tennessee and Missouri. This is the CBS game. I think Missouri ends up winning. Missouri's a very good team. And Missouri's going to go to a pretty good bowl game. The noon kickoff, Alabama taking on Kentucky. I think Alabama rolls in this game. I know it's at Kentucky. Alabama is going to stop their biggest strength. Alabama's defense is going to stop Ray Davis. Ray Davis is not going to rush for over 100 yards. He is going to be bottled up. I think that Kentucky probably gets embarrassed because Alabama is firing on all cylinders right now. And Jalen Milroe, he is going to be an NFL quarterback. His draft stock has catapulted him not to the elevation of Bryce Young or Mac Jones or Tua, but he's going to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, A.J. McCarron got drafted in the NFL. Greg McElroy got drafted in the NFL. These Alabama quarterbacks, I know they got very blessed having 4 straight years of Jalen Hurts, Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. A lot of people think that Jalen Milroe is a drop-off from those quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe is a good quarterback. He's just not living those expectations of what Bryce Young was. Bryce Young won the Heisman. Bryce Young was just a magician. When the play broke down, Bryce Young just pulled and put on the Superman cape and just bailed Alabama out last year. And that was just a very vanilla offense with Bill O'Brien. He's now at the Patriots. I do like Tommy Rees as an offensive coordinator. I think that he can have some creative play calling and use Jalen Milroe's strength. Run the football when the play breaks down. That's going to be an exciting game. I'm going to break down all the SEC games, and then I'll get into the ACC, and we'll go ahead and close this show out. I'm not going to talk a little bit about the NFL. I talked about that on yesterday's show. Vanderbilt taking on South Carolina. I just think South Carolina's in trouble. They're not going to a bowl game this year. I mean, even if they try to win out, I mean, they could win the rest of their games, go 6-6, go to a bowl game. Auburn taking on Arkansas. This is a game. Arkansas's got some momentum after beating Florida in the Swamp. Arkansas can still make a bowl game if they win out, but Auburn, if they win this game, they're bowl eligible. Florida and LSU, I think LSU ends up winning this game. Mississippi State, Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M's got to win this game, right? 5-4, that's not going to cut it under Jimbo Fisher. Not at all, not one iota. ACC matchup. Last night, the Louisville Cardinal, they did it. They beat the Virginia Cavaliers 31-24. Louisville is 9-1. Imagine if they did not lose that one game. I think that Louisville could have been not only a college football playoff contender, but they could be facing off against Florida State in the ACC title game. Remember, they did away with the Coastal and the Atlantic division. That would be very fun. Virginia Tech taking on Boston College. Boston College is 6-3. I just could not see this come from anywhere. Boston College has just come out of nowhere, and they're 6-3. Georgia Tech taking on Clemson. Both teams 5-4. I think Georgia Tech, they're an underdog by 2 touchdowns. I think Georgia Tech could sneak up on some people. Clemson is not the Clemson of old. They're not the team that competes for national championships every year. You have to evolve in this game, and Dabo Swinney has failed to do that, and you're getting what you get. Clemson is 5-4. They're not a very good team. Georgia Tech is taking them on in Death Valley. NC State taking on Wake Forest. Miami and Florida State. Oh, this was my favorite rivalry in the 90s. Miami, a very disappointing 6-3, and if Mario Cristobal takes a knee, they would be 7-2. But they did lose some disappointing games. On the road against NC State, they lost to North Carolina, and they had no business losing to Georgia Tech. But can Miami pull off the upset in Tallahassee? It is a rivalry game. I mean, it really would look good for Mario Cristobal because Miami boosters, Miami fans, they're starting to get nervous, wondering if Mario Cristobal is the right guy. They had Manny Diaz before that. They had Mark Richt. I mean, the last time that Miami really got close to the college football playoff, Mark Richt, he had them ACC championship, but they just lost to Clemson, and it was just, it's been a downhill roller coaster ride for Miami since then. Pitt, Syracuse, and then Duke, North Carolina. The big college football matchup is Penn State, Michigan. I know all the talk about Michigan is the whole sign stealing, Connor Stallions, everything that's going on with that. But that's neither here or there. Penn State could really solidify themselves as a college football playoff contender if they can get the upset against the Michigan Wolverine. They're young. Penn State's got a very young offense. And I think that it is going to be a tough task for the Penn State Nittany Lions. One more note that I want to talk about before I get out of here. I do want to talk a little bit about the Sun Belt because you got Georgia State 6-3 taking on Appalachian State. That's 5-4. Georgia Southern on the road taking on Marshall. Troy 7-2 taking on Louisiana Monroe. They should get the win on that because James Madison, Chris Blackshear brought this point up at the Glenwood Gators Coaches Show. James Madison is not eligible to win the Sun Belt. So by default, Troy could end up winning the Sun Belt once again. Well, that's all the time I have here on the show. I want to thank all my listeners and everybody who has downloaded the podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the Facebook channel. I'm also on YouTube. You can download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Ryan O'Neill, back at the station, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Happy Veterans Day to everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will see you Monday. Bye.